Welcome to City of Keene in Focus. Thanks so much for listening. Hello and welcome back to our next episode of City of Keene in Focus. I am joined today by Elizabeth Ferland, our city manager. Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi, Asa. How are you?
I'm well. Happy Friday.
Yay.
Yay.
Yeah, Friday is awesome. It's also a good day to get stuff done because it tends to be a bit more quiet Friday here at the City Hall. Everybody, does all their work to get ready for the meetings. And then once the meetings happen, the next day it's like putting all your work away, filing things, getting caught back up. So it tends to be a little quieter around here, which is great.
And we love a Friday in summer.
Oh, I know.
So we are joined by Terry Hood, our city clerk. Hi, Terry.
Hi there.
The tables have been turned, Terry.
Oh, yeah.
Last night, you had city councilors doing little videos on the election, and today we have
exciting.
you. Yeah.
Yes, it was so fun. I did a casting call.
That was
and
great.
I got 6 counselors that wanted to help out with these videos, and they're just little PSAs to help voters understand how to get an absentee ballot, what's going to happen on election day, all this good stuff so that they'll know what records to bring with them and all the stuff they're going to need to know to make sure they can vote.
They did a great job. We
Yes.
have some actors on city council.
sure
They were
do.
wonderful.
They were having fun with it, which is
Mhm.
awesome.
Very
Yeah.
animated.
Yeah, so there was a lot of really good election information that they touched on.
So the primary is on September 8th. This is a partisan election. It's a state primary. Going to be a lot of different offices on the ballot, including governor, state representative, state senator. So yeah, anyone who is currently registered with a party will take the ballot that they are affiliated with. Part of our PR was sort of, you're undeclared, what does that mean? Like some folks think they can't participate in a primary if they're undeclared, but that's not the case. They want to stay undeclared after they vote. They have a little bit of extra work to do, but it's pretty straightforward and easy, and we try to shepherd people through that process. So,
And Terry, talk to us a little bit about the number of people, the volunteers that you have to get for these elections
Mhm.
and how we are structured here in the city with the different wards.
sure. So we have 5 wards in Keene. Each ward has elected officials, moderator, ward clerk, checklist supervisor, and selectmen. We do also have a group of ballot inspectors, and these are folks that have to maintain a party affiliation in order to serve. And although their name makes it sound like they're inspecting the activity, they're actually really boots on the ground helping at the election, checking voters in, handing out ballots. Ideally, you have equal ratio of Democrats and Republicans working. Doesn't always work out that way, but we do try. And they work together and help our elections run. And it's great.
Do you have a guess for us how many people it takes to run an election?
It all depends on the size.
Mhm.
It's by scale, right? So if it's a small election where we are expecting maybe 10-15% turnout, we still need all the officials I just mentioned. We
Mhm.
need ballot inspectors. We need a moderator, a clerk, the selectman, a checklist supervisor, registering voters. At each ward, I would say at a minimum 10 people. That would be a very light staffing,
Okay, so 50 volunteers
at least.
at least for a light election.
Right.
What about when it's a presidential?
Double that.
Double it
Yeah.
at
Oh,
least,
wow.
yeah.
Not only double that, but also readers,
Mhm.
people that come from the community will volunteer to help guide people as they enter the polling location so they don't inadvertently stand in the wrong line and then become frustrated. We try to make sure we streamline things that way, provide corridors for people to follow. At a local election, the room is not as full, obviously, and it's easier to find your way. But when it's a busy election, we'll actually put up like stanchions and help guide people through, like make walkways for them to follow.
Yeah.
So,
This year, some things have changed.
yes, actually, in 2024, right after the federal election, a House bill was passed that changed voter registration requirements and took away the opportunity to sign an affidavit in lieu of providing actual documents. Since then, there has been another change in May of this year. A court order was issued that requires us to now provide affidavits to people who have issues showing their citizenship. So that is the one caveat to the changes that occurred a couple of years ago. And so these are going to be for people who vote mostly in state and federal elections. All of this is probably going to be new to them,
Mm-hmm.
but certainly that's what our office is there for if there's a question. come and see us, give us a call, look at our website. We try to put a lot of information out so that people are well prepared.
Was there a change around student voters too?
Yes,
Okay.
there was. And that was a more recent one as well. The legislature has passed a bill that no longer allows a registered voter who's a student to show their student ID to get their ballot. So they're going to want to bring a government issued ID with them, their driver's license, even if it's from another state. That's okay. Bring your driver's license or your passport. Something government issued is what we're going to be looking for.
So if a student is here and their family lives in, let's say, Massachusetts, and the student is here living on campus, where do they vote? Do they vote at their parents' address or do they vote at the school's address?
Sure. So I think it's a conversation students will want to have with their parents, especially if they're new to college. Perhaps before you leave for the semester, talk to your parents about whether or not it makes sense for you to vote in the elections that are occurring in your own state. And that would be done presumably by absentee ballot or some sort of early voting that might be happening in that state. Or they have the option of claiming the school address as their domicile.
Okay, so they can choose either.
They can,
Huh.
yeah. Most of the student population lives in Ward 1 in Keene because the actual campus and all the campus housing is in Ward 1.
Oh,
If
interesting.
they live off campus, then they could be in another voting ward and they should just check with us and we'll let them know where they're supposed to be.
Well, you and your team do a fabulous job. When I go in to vote, it's always a well-run operation. So,
Thank you very much.
and I know it's a long day for you guys too. You're usually not wrapping up until close to midnight.
Yes, and the primary elections, the state primary and the presidential primary are the longest nights that we usually deal with because it's essentially 2 elections that you're reconciling. It does take a while, but that time and effort that it takes, it's important because we know the results we're giving out at the end are best that we can give you.
Yes. I really appreciate you coming in today to talk a little bit about elections and some of the changes.
I mean, I just want to encourage people to come out and vote and reach out to us in advance if you have questions. We're open every day.
Monday through Friday.
Monday through Friday, yes, 8 to 4:30. And if we're not available in person, we have lots of ways to reach out to us through the web portal or leave a message. We'll call you back, but contact us. We want to help you. Make sure that you're able to vote.
I think you touched on this a little bit, but just so it's really, really clear for folks, if someone is unable to attend Election Day in person and they'd like to vote via absentee ballot, how should they go about getting one of those?
Sure. We have a few ways you could do that. There is a form to fill out. The form does require information about you. Presumably, you're registered to vote. If you're an undeclared voter, we need to make sure that you tell us what ballot you want if you're participating in the primary. And in New Hampshire, you have to have a reason for voting absentee. And so you'll want to look at our website and make sure you qualify. What would qualify you would be things like an illness, that you're going to be absent from town, even that you're working that day and your work hours are just not going to allow you to get to the polls. If you're caring for a family member who's dealing with an illness, there's a lot of different reasons why you could qualify. So don't assume that you don't without checking in with us because you may well be able to vote absentee.
Good.
Well, thanks
Thanks,
for having
Terry.
me.
Thank you so
Appreciate
much.
it.
Yeah.
It's fun.
So last night was City Council. It was a pretty long one.
Yeah. And, we had some interesting communications that came in this past week that were acknowledged and referred last night. One of them is a competing letter regarding dogs at events. And so, if you remember, a few weeks ago, Councillor Filio has submitted a communication for the council to consider restricting dogs at all community events. So the ones that are community funded, and those tend to be the larger events in the downtown area. I guess he'd been concerned about some issues with dog behavior. So one of the things that we did was we took a look at the Pumpkin Festival ordinance, and in the ordinance that's related to the Pumpkin Festival, it talks about not allowing dogs. And I think that goes back to when the Pumpkin Festival used to be much larger than it is now and a very different type of event. And that rule was put in place back then. And so now we have Councilor Filio asking it to be applied across all community events. And then a gentleman named Paul Allen Weber who has requested that the restriction be removed from the Pumpkin Festival and that dogs be allowed at all events. And so it's going to be an interesting debate. I think we're going to get to hear both sides of this. And one of the things I think will potentially make it a little bit more complicated is that we do have people who live in the downtown. So if there's an event happening in the downtown and you have a dog and you're coming out, you may not be coming out to go to the event. You might be coming out to do something else, and your dog might be in the event footprint. And really, I think realistically, it comes down to if a dog is behaving badly or if the dog owner is not properly keeping the dog under control. That's when we tend to see complaints. I don't know what will happen. It's going to be an interesting debate. The other thing is, and this is coming up on the MSFI committee on September 23rd, is the design for the solar pavilion on Gilboa Ave. Now, we have already got the grant, which was over $2 million. We have already awarded the contract, and that's the engineering firm that's been putting together the conceptual plans. A letter has come in to ask the city to hold off on building this gazebo until we create a master plan of sorts for the entire Gilboa Ave roadway. And the challenge with that is we're under a window of time that we must complete the work for the project. And I think that delaying it to go through a public process and what's envisioned is some sort of a planned charrette, that would take time. We are interested in doing that, but my concern right now is making sure that that does not jeopardize the solar pavilion project and the grant that we've received for that. There will be some additional options for MSFI to consider in terms of how it's designed and where it's specifically located. But I'm hoping that project will stay on track because we were very fortunate to get that Northern Borders grant. And we still want to be able to build the structure so that it will provide the energy that offsets all of the city's use in the downtown area. So I think it's an important project. I think it's important to keep it moving forward, and hopefully we can find a good compromise in terms of how we might be able to create a master plan for Gilboa Ave and still keep the project moving forward. So the other item that came in last night through communications is a letter from Councilor Jones. This letter is going to be heard at the September 9th Planning Licenses and Development Committee. It's a request for a consideration of an ordinance establishing a temporary moratorium on data centers and cryptocurrency mining facilities. So this is something very new that we're seeing, the changes in technology, the demand for AI, the increased need for these data mining locations and data centers. Councilor Jones is bringing in this request, and I will tell you that I'm not sure if this is something the city can do or not. So the city attorney is going to be looking into this and determining if we have some way, if the council is interested in doing this, if there is a way legally for us to restrict it through a moratorium. Now, we've talked about moratoriums in the past. We've talked about a moratorium several years ago now related to 5G, and that was very complicated because the Telecommunications Act is very complicated. This one's not going to be quite as complicated. I do think there is potentially a way to have a moratorium, but we'll wait and see what our city attorney says after they do some additional research. Last night, there were a few reports that came out of committee. So there was the decisions related to the pool at Robin Hood Park. So Robin Hood Park is a two-phase project. So the first phase of the project is related to the pool. And the reason why we need to do the pool first is that it's leaking. It's leaking significantly. And so we moved that part of the project forward. The council had moved forward the funds to do the design engineering for the pool. And last night, the council voted to go with option one, which was presented by both CHA, our consultant, and our Parks and Rec director. And it's basically just a refurb of the pool. So not a lot of changes. There are some additional ADA things that need to happen, but it really is about keeping the pool pretty much the same and lining it and making sure that we address some of the issues that the pool has. And so that is moving forward. And at the same time, there are opportunities to provide input coming up in September about what happens in the rest of the park. So, kind of the fun things, really talking about the amenities at the park and what sort of things people envision for Robin Hood Park. And so that process is going to take us a little while. So I would say stay tuned and get involved if you have an interest in Robin Hood Park and something that the park either is doing really well or isn't doing really well, to make sure that you have your voice heard while it goes through this design phase. And then there were several other committee reports last night that were informational. So lots of informational reports at MSFI related to work that the state is doing, as well as the usual downtown project update. Our airport director is also working with our facilities director, Deputy City Manager Andy Bohannon, who is also in charge of facilities, has been working with Ryan Cooley, our airport director, to create a plan for airport terminal renovations. So last night, the council authorized us to go ahead and apply for some pretty substantial grants to do those renovations. So that's our first step. If we're able to identify and be awarded grant funds, we'll start the design process in moving it beyond just what it preliminarily could look like to more of an actual design. So, but the first step is to find the money. Got to find the money.
Gotta find the money.
Yes. So that's what we're doing right now. They authorized me to work with the airport director to submit some grants. The other thing I mentioned last night during manager's comments is related to the pay and compensation study that the city is undertaking. This has been a strategic priority for us for a few years now. We just have not had the internal capacity to take the project on. It's a pretty big project.
Yeah.
You basically have to look at every position in the city and start from scratch. So there is a questionnaire that all of the employees will get, and it will tell us if our job descriptions are accurate or not, and whether or not they need to be revised. And that's really the first step, and that's the most important step, because that job description will tell us where they should be placed on the salary range. I don't know when the last time we've actually done a comprehensive, I think it might have actually been in the 80s.
Wow.
It's been quite a while since we've done this comprehensive review. So it's just the beginning of this process. So last night I provided a copy of the survey that will be going out to employees, along with the email explaining the process. The HR department has put together a team that will be shepherding this project along, and you'll hear lots of updates as we move forward with the process. Last night, we also added a time-sensitive item about opportunity zones. And so opportunity zones are census tracts that the federal government defines that are eligible for additional incentives for developers. And so we have 2 census tracts in Keene that are eligible, and we have had for the past several years, one of those census tracts has been an opportunity zone. But I do think that there's just a lot of confusion, or maybe just not awareness of the zone being available. And the opportunity zone is really a federal incentive. So it doesn't change your property taxes. For once, this isn't an economic development tool that is based on local property taxes. There's no need to change any of that. It's about paying federal taxes. And so I think the savvy developers realize what they can do in these zones. But I think this time around, if we are lucky enough to be selected again, we'll do an educational campaign to make sure that people know which properties are in the zone, and make sure that developers know that they can access these federal tax incentives if they do a project in that zone. But first, we have to be selected and awarded. So talking to Rebecca Landry about this, there are, I think, 50 or more zones that are eligible in New Hampshire. And right now, you have to do this application to the state of New Hampshire, and the governor will decide. It's either between 25 or 35 zones that the governor can put forward to the federal government. So right there, it's going to be competitive.
Yeah.
Some communities have multiple zones. And so last night, we needed a letter of support from the city council to go along with our application. And we're working with Monadnock Economic Development Corporation to put together a strong application, which we hope will be looked at favorably by the governor and that we will at least be chosen for one of the two opportunity zones. So stay tuned for more on that.
We'll keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah. Last night, the city council adopted the fiscal policy resolution. So that has been on there for a little while. It started with a workshop with the city council. It then went to the finance committee, and then it stayed on more time while we made some additional language changes. And then last night, the resolution was adopted. And so that's the beginning of our budget process. That tells us the parameters for the budget. And one of the things that we did change is the CPIU, so the cost of living index, is now the Northeast Region Index. And there's really not a huge change in terms of what that means. We looked at the 3 different CPIU indexes, and they're very, very close in terms of percentages. It really was more about the Northeast region being closer to us and also being more readily available. So they adopted the resolution, and we are now moving forward. Last night, our city assessor did a presentation, an update related to the 2026 revaluation. So this is something we've talked about a couple of times on here, but he now gave us some specifics. They have been working on the numbers, so looking at all of the properties in the city of Keene and how much the market has changed for each type of property. And last night, he did a PowerPoint presentation to the city council and explained the process for doing a revaluation and the requirement to do it every 5 years. And he explained what the numbers are telling us. And the numbers are not that different. If you look at what other towns and cities, Concord recently was in the news about their revaluation. And I think their numbers are pretty close to ours. So right now it looks like in terms of residential properties, single family homes will be increasing 67%, multifamily homes 68%, residential condos 64%, manufactured housing 140%. That's the one that we knew it was coming. If you were in the market for an affordable home, you would see that mobile homes, manufactured homes, have been selling for much more. What used to be a medium assessment for manufactured homes of $37,200 is now $97,800. And so it's just been a dramatic change in value. And then commercial properties, apartment buildings, the average increase is about 49%. Commercial properties is 31%, and industrial is 29%. So that's just the average. It doesn't mean that if you have a commercial property, it's going to be exactly 31%, or your single family home will be exactly 67%. That's the overall average. And so if you look at your assessment card right now and you apply this average, you'll get a good sense of where you probably will see your value after this revaluation is complete. That new value will be used for the tax rate setting in November for the bills that will come out in December. But we won't be using the same rate. So what happens with the new values, you have the budget that was adopted, the new values that will be established, and the rate will drop somewhere in the 20s. It's probably going to be in the mid 20s somewhere. We won't know until all of the numbers are complete. Right now, we still need to do the utility assessments. They're a big part of our overall value. So once that's done, they'll have all the pieces for the reval, and they'll start meeting with individual property owners who disagree. So they will get their property card in the mail. Hopefully everyone takes the time to really review it, make sure it's accurate. If you've had something on your property, a shed, a garage that's no longer there, make sure you tell us so that you can get those things corrected before the final values are set. Also, if you look at your card and you don't think your property could sell for that amount. So it's really based on the market. What can this property sell for? And if you take a look at it and it's not in line what other properties similar to yours are assessed at, come in and ask those questions and take advantage of the opportunity to meet with the assessors before these values are set. So, notification to property owners of these preliminary values will be in the mail beginning next week. So, in the next week or two, you should be seeing these. And then they will start setting up appointments for anyone who wants them beginning the week of August 17th. Those meetings will continue for several weeks until they finalize all the values. They expect the project to be done in mid-September and to have our utility values by the end of September and to set the new tax rate in sometime in November for the bill that will come out in December. So this is a big project. It is required by the state of New Hampshire for every town and city. Every 5 years, you must bring your values to 100% of market value. So your assessment should look like what you can sell your property for. It should be as close as possible to 100% of market value. I want to talk about something that wasn't on the agenda last night that is actually late breaking news.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So today there was a press release sent out, and Deputy Greg Seymour will be the next fire chief here.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Oh,
the city of
great.
Keene. So we congratulate him. That will be September 1st. His appointment will begin because Jason right now will stay on with us until the end of this month. But Greg will take over at the beginning of September. And so we're really excited to have him on board. We had a great interview panel for this selection. I had 2 city councilors on the panel, Councilor Chadbourne and Councilor Powers. I had our current police chief, Steve Stewart, on the panel. We had a fire chief from Williston, Vermont on the panel, and both deputy city managers were on the panel and our HR director. So it was a great panel. It was a long day. We had several interviews to do, and they were all internal candidates. And it was a hard decision. We weighed out a lot of different things, but Greg was the unanimous top candidate for the position. And, we're really excited to have him on board as chief in the beginning of September.
Big congratulations to him. So on that note, I will encourage everyone to go to keenanh.gov/jobs, check out the open positions there. Community night is coming up on Tuesday, August 18th from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. That's a really fun event. It's a great opportunity to come out and meet the city departments and see the city vehicles.
And have a free meal.
Yeah. The fleet department, they'll be cooking burgers and hot dogs all evening, and they do a great job with.
Yeah.
And bring the kiddos. It's a fun touch a truck event. 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. will be a sensory hour where it'll be quiet. But after 5, they can honk on the horns and have a great time. So put that on your calendar. That's always a really, really fun night.
I am definitely snagging my grandson for that
Oh,
night.
yay!
That'll be so much fun.
That's great. And I think if that is it, we will wrap up for today and we will see you next time. Thanks for listening to City of Keene in Focus. We'll see you next time.